So it's a way to go through and have kind of a more lightweight visual representation of a larger project in a form that's easily shared as the PDF file format. You can take and open that up within Bluebeam Review. You can spin and rotate and do all that stuff for viewing capabilities of that content, that file. You can choose to hide like the roof of the building to see what's inside of there, or take the entire east wall off the house and see what's inside of it. So you can go through and show the content, pivot around, rotate that, and view it in a fashion that makes sense, because oftentimes just a plan view may not be easily interpreted to what it really is supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I think that functionality, once that also goes up into the cloud, that'll help a lot. Welcome to the BIM Heroes Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about a lot of the different components of BIM. And in today's episode, we will be discussing the state of Bluebeam. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast.
How you doing, Cody?
Good morning.
This always start out the podcast by asking you guys to introduce yourselves. So Bryan and Ken, if you would introduce yourselves.
Yeah, my name is Bryan Gaitan. I work with US CAD. Excuse me. I am with the sales development team. Here at US CAD for the Bluebeam division.
Good morning. Ken Phelps, also with US CAD. I'm the senior product specialist around Bluebeam Review. This is my primary focus. Last probably 8 years, it's just Bluebeam Review. So all the picks and clicks and training and demos and whatnot is what my focus here.
And just a little bit about what US CAD is, a little bit of its history, and what services you provide with US CAD.
So at US CAD, we're a technology software company where we help those with their technological needs in terms of software. We're able to assist them with their BIM, with any kind of BIM services. We do help with outside of Bluebeam. We do also assist with Autodesk and Adobe. Ken, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So but more than just that, it's the other pieces that go into the entire AEC environment, dealing with any kind of scanning needs that might be available, even some certain IP that we have developed as well that ties into Revit. And we have our entire own production team as well. So if you need like some support in doing some design work and getting some projects out the door, we have an entire staff of, I couldn't even tell you how many at this point now. It's pushing upwards of 100 people that do just design work for various clients as well. So pretty much any needs around AEC, more than likely we can help.
And then just a little bit of the history of your relationship with Bluebeam and how that came about.
I know that Bluebeam, we started US CAD. It began in 1999 with our fearless leader, Danny Counts. We took on Bluebeam in 2009. So we've been with Bluebeam for going on 15 years now. So we've been, true partners. Now we're platinum partners. We're recognized worldwide with Bluebeam, from helping with training to services to, consulting and all the above is where we come in when it comes to Bluebeam.
And then what is Bluebeam as a whole? I know a lot of people in the world do know what Bluebeam is, but what is its true function as a group?
Sure. So Bluebeam in general is a design review software in just very simple terms. It's a way to take any kind of a PDF that you've got content on. I'd say content because it's not really relative to the AEC industry specifically. It could be for anybody with information in a PDF format that you want to add to commentary to. You want to strike through words, want to add highlights around content, draw in some line work of where you're missing information. It's a way to create a markup of a PDF. Primarily right now, it's focused in the AEC industry because it just works really well to kind of synchronize with the needs and the wants within that workflow to kind of fit that industry well. But it's not just for AEC. We've got clients that do manufacturing stuff, like they're making robotic equipment for bubble wrap packaging stuff. They mark up content too. So the Bluebeam workflow fits just fine inside of their needs as well. So it's a way to go through and take a PDF and add commentary to it. And then you share that amongst the team internally or even externally.
Now, talking about some of the solutions for, let's say, the AEC industry, let's talk about like the different components of clients, architects, engineers, contractors, and subs. What are some solutions for owners to use Bluebeam?
So if the owner thought of it, it's big on having that handoff and having the final build of all the content, the as-built, whatnot, all the markups being used inside of there. So you can share the entire package. You can go through and make like an archival style PDF. It's nice wrapped up little, ribbon on that whole process and hand that over to the owner of the content. So we have the latest and greatest information with the most current markups inside of there. An easy way to change hands and not free.
And then switching gears to the architects and engineers, what benefits and solutions may it give them?
So it's similar as well. For the architects and engineers, it's a way to have all the content marked up, a nice simple package for sharing it with inside of there. So within like the engineering scope, trying to take measurements off the PDF, if you don't have the actual design software at your disposal, oftentimes that software is not cheap. Buying extra seats for someone to take a measurement or two seems not cost effective. You can get a piece of software like Bluebeam Review that a fraction of the cost of the design software and get the measurements and values from that information without having to invest a ton of money and resources into that.
Yeah, and I think that leads into contractors and subcontractors. One of the things that I've always liked about it, obviously the markup tool, but the other piece of it is finding scale. Most of the time, the drawings will have a scale, but the functionality within Bluebeam to be able to find a scale of a drawing is really important.
Yeah, for sure. So again, it goes back to not having the actual design software. Oftentimes, for like the subs and trades, they're not necessarily always involved in the design of the process. They have to take what's been given to them from an architect or whomever is trying to supply the information, understand the contents of it, and somehow create like a bid to understand how to charge off, for a given project. So you can get all those measurements from the PDF directly without, again, having to have the design software, having the team that knows the design software. It's a fairly intuitive software to go through with Bluebeam Review. Doesn't take a ton of education to get you useful and just effective at using it. And I could hang out with you for a day and you'd be pretty darn effective at using the software to be productive with it and to get what you need out of it. So that's a way to go through and really expedite the process to get information from the file effectively.
Yeah, and I think on the sub side and contractor side, the more that gets out into the field, whether it's the project manager using it or the field side using it out in the field, I think that'll go a long way in helping them trying to communicate different challenges that they're seeing in the field.
Yeah, for sure. That's the other part that Bluebeam Review can offer too, is having that collaboration part of the review conversation. Having it all internally on like a network or a server drive, someplace to share files, that's fine. But how does the field team then access that? That can be a challenge to go through. And so within Bluebeam Review, it's got some cloud collaboration tools to leverage for that communication internally and externally, just to make that process more efficient.
Which is a great lead into the different workflows that Bluebeam can offer. One of the big things that we use it for and will continue to use it for is design review in terms of constructability. Explain a little bit about what you've seen on that front of how somebody would use it for constructability.
Yeah, for the software itself, getting into being able to place the content you need to, like, even like for site management to go through and like, here's a crane and where does that crane go? How does it reach on the actual site? You can have tools created inside of the software to place a certain size crane. It's got a certain reach to it. That content can be predefined in what's termed as your tool chest, your library of content you want to repurpose inside of the file that you're reviewing to place the information you need to on the PDF to understand where you would maybe store goods. Here's your staging area. Here's where a crane has to go to see if something is easily constructed and can be created in an efficient manner. It's having the right tools at your disposal to put that content on the sheet. It makes the process for there so much more efficient.
Yeah, and I think that that's a big portion. The site logistics as a whole has always been a challenge for a lot of people. A lot of times it was done on a piece of paper and then photocopied and then tried to expand that out. But the power of Bluebeam, really, easy to take that tool chest. You can save a lot of those different things from project to project, so you're not having to recreate them. And then taking that and the ability for somebody like a superintendent or a sub to easily do what they always did by drawing it out, but being able to do that pretty quickly using Bluebeam is a major impact that Bluebeam has done. In terms of takeoff, so we talked a little bit about scales. Um, I feel like takeoff is a major component. Obviously, there's other softwares that do, auto takeoff or takeoff of drawings in the past. But how does Bluebeam assist with that?
Yeah, so one of the main things when you're trying to do your takeoff is setting the scale inside of your sheet. You want to measure lengths, you want to get areas, you can get volumes off of there too. I know it's a pains word to say it's a PDF to get volumes, but volume's just math. It's X times Y, and you put in that Z component to it, there's your volume. So you can put in that depth for volume. So whatever you need for a value from the PDF, get length, area, volume, even quantities to find content, count how many of those items that you have. You can set all that up inside of the software. The big piece for just gaining efficiencies and just the productivity in that process is trying to leverage your tool chest. It's something that I preach in every class I've done is put some time and effort into developing your tool chest so it's repeatable, and then you can share it with the entire team so they have the same standard tools to use in their process as well. You can build up the tool set for whatever it is that you're trying to measure. If you're doing the baseboard trim, doing some finish work in a home, if you're putting in low voltage power or the sewer line coming in from the street, whatever it's for that you're trying to measure, build tools to support that. Then in the markups list at the bottom, you can wrap up all the numbers. So if you got 1,000 feet of one item, 2,000 feet of something else, so many square feet of some third item, it's all totaled for you in the bottom down below in the markups list. All of that content can either be extracted manually out of there into a spreadsheet to do whatever you need to do next with that. There's also the opportunity to take those measured values and have them sync directly into a spreadsheet as well. So as you're doing the measurements of whatever it is you're trying to get from there, those values are fed directly into a spreadsheet automatically. And then your spreadsheet you got set up with all the template file data. You want to throw in the labor cost and the hangers for putting in some ducting or whatever it's for. That can be tied into the spreadsheet that you already have. So if you're doing a lot of that, on-screen style takeoff content, you're in the PDF, you're working through it, but you're feeding into some other systems downstream, you can tie into those systems. But great way is to make the information more valuable and more powerful for you.
Yeah, and that markup tool, whether it's for the takeoff side of things or when you're doing design review and you're having conversations and collaborating that way, is definitely one of the big parts, and being able to export that data out of Bluebeam and use that in different ways, um, sets Bluebeam aside of how that program is really powerful in doing so.
Yeah, the markups list as well, I kind of piggyback on that, is customizable. The fact that you can have all the data you'd need to, maybe in the spreadsheet, could reside just right in the PDF itself in the markups list. That markups list down below is basically like a spreadsheet. It's got columns, it's got rows, it's got cells of information, and you can customize those columns. So if you want to have something where I'm measuring out my 3/4 inch pipe, whatever it's for, and it's a certain value, a certain cost per foot, you can write up a new column with a formula in it to take the material that you got for a 3/4 galvanized steel, whatever it's for, and have a cost per foot tied to it and have it give you a subtotal right inside of the PDF. So if you want to have some of that math being done in the file versus being pulled out to a secondary spreadsheet, you can set it up that way too. That's one of the big things I've loved about Bluebeam Review is its customizability. It's not where you're locked into, here's the software, make it work, because that's how the interface is set up. you can tweak this to really be efficient for how you want to use the software, not just how, the creator and the manufacturer of the software says that you need to use the software. It's up to you. You got a lot of freedom to go through and customize this to really suit your needs.
And that's the great aspect of, let's say, the drawing and document management as well. So when you want to organize a set of drawings, let's say outside of how the design team broke them out, you could do so in any which way you want to, by combining them or extracting them, you name it. Um, and I think the other piece of that is allowing the ability to overlay, to see changes between drawings, that new concept of using that tool to be able to figure out the changes in the drawing.
Yeah, the entire process of the document comparison, be it with dot compare or overlay pages, really seems to light some people up with saying, "Oh, my goodness, why didn't you show me this earlier?" I do recall one story from years ago, just doing a presentation of software. New client, had never used Bluebeam Review before, doing a presentation for the entire room of people, about 35 people in the room. And I ended with my comparison document, kind of my big showstopper item. And the owner of that was a little upset with me. He was like, "Why didn't you lead with that?" Because we would have said, "Stop talking," and just how much. Because that one feature was enough to save them so much headache and hassle that it didn't matter what else they could do. It was worth it alone with just that function. So having the opportunity to do a comparison is fantastic. The overlay is fun too. Now, one piece just to throw in some kind of tips with the whole process here is the overlay is not limited to just 2 pages. People always assume it's, here's one sheet and here's the second sheet that's overlaid. Sure, have at it. That works fantastic. But it could be 3, 4, 5 sheets to overlay. If you want to have, here's the architectural plan, here's the structural component to it, here's some mechanicals that go inside of the building too. You can overlay all that content and just see how they overlay it to each other. So it's kind of a top-down plan view coordination of all the content. It's not going to replace something like a Navisworks with a nice 3D model doing the proper, clash detection process there. Does not replace that. But if you don't have those tools and all you have is the PDF, this might kind of fit the bill for some of those just quick understanding of the content. Overlay multiple sheets, not just 2.
Yeah, I think that's still, a major part of the industry, right? The way that we used to do BIM coordination was with a light table and overlaying drawings on top of each other. So in a way, Bluebeam has created that way to do that at a very high level, and then you can always, go from there. But it's still really important to have that and have that ability to be able to do it. And the other piece of that is too, which I want to get your thoughts on both of those. Um, the drawings today, one of the challenges is in the past, it was always you had to draw a cloud around something when it changed. But now because it's the advent of being able to duplicate drawings quickly, details being placed automatically on the drawings, it's coming harder and harder, I guess, for them to make those changes and put a cloud around certain things. But that ability within Bluebeam for that allows to show this is what's changed. I think that's a huge, huge benefit of using Bluebeam.
Yeah, for sure. Because making changes, you might make 7 changes on a Tuesday, and you made 12 more changes on Wednesday. You may have forgotten the 7 things you did on Tuesday because it's yesterday's news. But you cloud and you highlight and you notate the ones you remember you've done. And you may forget other ones. I mean, whoever's making the changes, they're human. They're going to forget stuff. Whereas the comparison tools doesn't matter. If you made things different today or yesterday or 3 weeks ago, if it's different, it's going to be discovered. You're going to see it. So it doesn't matter if it's been flagged or not, you're still going to find it, which is going to be a huge time saver too, assuming all the clouding is everything. And it almost never is, just because there's so many changes and there's iterations happening so fast of the files, no one can remember everything that you've done to change. But again, these comparison tools are huge to find those and notate them for you. Like the compare documents drops a little cloud around. Everything it finds different from one file to another. That's amazing.
Yeah, and the one piece to that to make that process even better, kind of like how the markup list is created for constructability, it would be really cool if Bluebeam created the ability, and maybe it's in there and I just don't know this, but the ability for that comparison tool to create a markup list of here's everything that's changed, and it's kind of like a narrative of all the things.
It kind of does that with the comparison. The overlay doesn't give you any kind of a markup list of content. Because all the overlay is doing is it's color coding all the data on the various pages that you want to overlay, over each other. So there's no markup list. But the compare documents does create the cloud on the PDF. And in the markups list, there is a cloud markup for each one of those that are on the sheet. So you can just, click the first one. It'll take you to where that is in the PDF. You can just use the down arrow to go to the next one, then go to the next one, and so on and so forth. So it can walk you through kind of the changes inside of the PDF to be reviewed. It's up to you if you want to have that be something that's relevant. Does it change the cost of something or not? Like now that doesn't change anything. Don't care. Don't need it. Just delete that one off. So it's not in the history of what's relevant. So you can go through and review that content and then you do what you need to with those files, that information then from there.
Yeah, which leads me into another piece of this, which is RFIs and submittals. So you've got the document management piece where you can essentially use it to manage that process within the sessions or projects. But you also have the ability to use the markup tools to create the RFIs and also to mark up submittals. Talk a little bit about that process.
Sure. So if making the RFI is a process to go through, it's not like a form-based routine. Right now, you would put a markup on a sheet, or you might copy some content from a page and then put that into your RFI document to go through and submit something of a smaller set. So versus sending the entire, sheet back saying, "Hey, I got questions on this one hand railing being used for a staircase." I don't want to share, a 60-page PDF document back for one question. So you can take a little snapshot of a region, copy that out of there, and put that information into another RFI document, for example. But you still want to probably flag that region as saying, well, this is tied to RFI XYZ, whatever number that one is. So in many cases, I've seen folks will take and they'll maybe just drop a cloud around an area, and then you can hyperlink that cloud to your RFI document. So you can just click on that and say, well, this is for RFI XYZ. Click it to take you to where that is of your other document to look at, to share for there. So a lot of ways to go through and set that up. It's really up to you as to what makes the most sense in your workflow as to what kind of method you want to use. Some just will capture a region, slap it to an email, and fire it off. No documentation, no history being used for it. Just, hey, I got questions on the handwriting. And it's in an email being sent off. But even the snapshot is a way to go through and capture that information and repurpose it effectively in other avenues for information sharing. If it's into an email, a Word doc, a new PDF, snapshot can be used to capture that content of a smaller subset, like doing a screen grab. Capture a small set of information and repurpose that elsewhere. That's a pretty common practice for doing something like an RFI.
And then in the submittal side of things, just three things that we like to use. Obviously, the stamp for the transmittal on the front, the ability to recreate that stamp and stamp each the transmittal. And then the visual and word search through the submittal is a major help that Bluebeam's created in that.
Yeah, the word search function is one of those that I still forget to show it as well in like demos and training classes sometimes, is that you can just simply right click on a word. And at the very bottom of the right click menu is search for that word. There's a whole separate search panel to look at. You can type in the word you want to find and hit search and go through and do it that way. Or you can just simply right click on the word. And at the bottom of that menu is search for that word. Just ways to improve the efficiency and get some certain tasks done more effectively. Little tidbits like that can just make the whole experience, the whole process working with PDF that much faster and even that much more enjoyable.
Yeah, and then the interactive stamps, the ability to interact with the document using that stamp. Just some thoughts on that.
Yeah, stamps can be a huge process to go through to really make the environment more consistent. The workflow you want to do. You can build out your own stamps. You can go as simple as a stamp just says the word approved or received, and that's all it is. Great. Build out that stamp and have that content to look the way you want to have it look. And then you can evolve it into maybe it's been received and you want to include the date of when that stamp was added. So when you're making the stamp, you're putting in your text box. There's a little dynamic drop down list at the bottom. You can click on that and get a menu then of all the choices of content you can pull in just from your system information. The date, the time, something like that to be applied automatically. Then the next tier of that would be up one more step for stamps, is having more of that interactive stamp where you would define it with certain fields inside of there. Like you want to fill out the project number before you apply the stamp to it. Or you want to put in the submittal number before you put the stamp on it. That does require a couple things to be true to make those types of stamps, is you got to have access to forms and have access to scripting. So in most cases, that requires the top tier of Bluebeam Review to do that. So if you're on Bluebeam Review 20 or previously, that'd be Bluebeam Review Extreme. If you're on Review 21, that would still be the top tier, but now it's called Complete to have access to your scripting functions. But once you have that set up, you can have a stamp that kind of pauses for a moment. You say, I want to use this stamp. And you drop it in there. A little dialog box pops up that you fill out. You want to put in a certain date and time and data inside of that environment first. Great. You can set that up, let it pause, then apply it to your PDF. It has all that content in the right locations on the stamp to be applied.
And then what about like tags? One of the things that I like to use a lot of is either layers and tags. Talk a little bit about that.
So with the tags, what do you mean by the tags inside here? What's a tag to you?
Well, I would say like a bookmark would be a good example of a tag.
Yeah, for sure. So some of that, I just kind of get into document prep is to be what I just call that kind of content, trying to set up with the right page labels being done for all the sheets, the bookmark to go through the PDF, even the hyperlinks to navigate through. Now here's a detail tag on here. Well, that detail is on a different page. Make a link to take me to that page. So some of that just document preparation. So if anyone has to use that file, they can do it more efficiently. So inside of Bluebeam Review, you can take the PDF and all like the title block information, the sheet number, the sheet title, and leverage that for either making your bookmarks directly from that information. You can make them all manually, but that just sounds exhausting to go through and do all that one by one, page by page. Or you can go through and do what's called auto marking, is the fancy behind the scenes term to it, is to extract the data right from the PDF without having to type it in manually. Now, the workflow that I tend to promote is to go through the page labeling process first. So get all like the title, the numbers you want to use from the PDF to label all your sheets with that. Then when it comes into making the bookmarks from that content, you can just repurpose all the effort you just put into the page labeling. But then I think it would be 2 clicks. You click create bookmarks and then click OK. And you have all the bookmarks done based off the page labels that you had just made a minute earlier. Then called into, sorry, Cody, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, sir.
So that can then be involved or kind of elevated into the hyperlinking. So you can leverage that same effort from the page labeling to look through the entire set of sheets you got for any place, say a sheet number resides. But we're pretty common within like different notes, like here's the detail for that content is on a different page, or it's a tag or section view tag being used. Those views are on other sheets, but they're listed by the page number that they reside on. We can do a quick search for that number inside of the PDF and make hyperlinks. So any place that sheet number shows up, if it's inside of a detail tag or a section or a note, that becomes a hyperlink to the right page where that information resides. Just making the entire process, whoever has to work on that file next, to make their just effort inside of there just more efficient.
Yeah, and the other tool that I like involved in that, kind of like bookmarks, but it's called layers. And the layers side of things, if you have, would say, a document that's CAD related, it'll pull up those layers that makes up the file. Talk a little bit about that and then spaces.
Yeah, layers can be one of those. It may or may not be part of the PDF. It depends on how the PDF was made and just what settings were turned on when the PDF was made. Like coming from AutoCAD, for example, you can just check a box to include layer information. If it's not checked, then you get the PDF it's made with no layer information inside of the PDF. So it depends on how the PDF was made. You may or may not see it. In many cases, the producer of that PDF may not want to include layers inside of there because you could maybe inadvertently turn content off and then forget that you have it turned off and then miss information. So they may not even produce a file that includes layers. But within the Bluebeam review kind of context of layers, it's similar to how, say, AutoCAD would present layers, but not quite the same. It's more about just color coding information and giving you then the opportunity to show or not show that information. So when you're making like tools in your tool chest for different disciplines that might be internally, this team does this thing. So we built certain tools for them to apply to the PDF. They could have their tools on a layer specific to them. So if a different group, a different team is involved in that file, they could just click that layer name to turn off all that markup content. But maybe it's just really busy. There's markups galore all over the file. It's hard to really see the PDF itself because there's just red lines everywhere. Turn them off. That way you can have that layer control to show or hide the content on those layers.
And now one of the newer tools in the last few years has been spaces. Talk a little bit about what you would use spaces.
Yeah, spaces can be a great way to go through and just name an area. So it's, Office 100, whatever you want to call it. You have a name for that location. So any markups you have applied to it will then go into that space. And space is just a column you can have turned on in the markups list that would then give the name of the space of where you have a markup residing. That gives you then one more opportunity to kind of filter and sort and organize the markups list to show the content that's relevant. So if I'm after only trying to understand, whatever markups reside in Office 100, I can filter my markup list down to only show that space. So then it only shows markup that reside within that space. But I'm not seeing 400 markup. It's the 3 that are in Office 100. That's what I want to see. So a space is just a way to go through and organize how the information can be categorized and by location within them. From Revit too, there is just simply a checkbox when you output from Revit to change the rooms you have into spaces in the PDF when you create the PDF. So if it's, room 1, room 2, room 3, that becomes space 1, space 2, space 3 in the PDF. It'll use the same naming scheme. So it'll be a room 1, room 2, but that there are spaces inside.
And that's when you're exporting from Revit to a PDF, and that picks that up automatically within Bluebeam.
Correct. It's a box that you do have to have checked to include all the room information, all the names of those as spaces in the PDF. So it's up to you. If you don't check it, then you don't get the space. But if you want to include that content, you just check a box in the setting for the PDF output.
Which is a great lead into the next portion of this, which is punch and project handover for the client. So just as a note, one thing that, we've always tried to do on like a punch list, especially if it's using spaces and brooms, that's typically how the punch is done, or different areas. What is the power of using Bluebeam to, let's say, use spaces to do punch lists?
Yeah, so part of that is kind of what I'd mentioned earlier, is that you can filter it down. So if you have a space defined for all the various rooms inside of a given building, if I care about, this given room, I filter down the markups list. It only shows me the markup within that location. So however they're flagged inside of the file, if it's just, here's issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, if it's just a number being used and a bunch of commentary goes with those as a way to kind of place hold the information, it's up to you. I've seen a lot of folks will create kind of this punch style key from the tool chest where it's just, maybe it's a simple letter It's maybe an SI. There's a switch install issue or a switch issue. It might just be a circle with an SI inside of it. But in the comments of that tag, that item, is the entire description that just better describes what the issue is. Switch install was bad or whatever it might be, need to be redone, whatever verbiage has to be added to that. That makes it for a smaller item to be used on the sheet with more data embedded into the commentary of the item in the markups list. You don't have this giant paragraph of text on the page. It's just a little tag thing, SI. And the comment says, switch install was bad, needs to be redone. You can, spell out whatever you need to inside of it. But using the spaces inside of that process, then you can filter it down to, I'm in this room now. Show me what's happening in this room. Filter down the markups list. Then you go to the next room. What's happening in this room? Filter by that space. You can trim down what is being displayed inside of your markups list easily with trying to leverage those spaces.
Yeah, one of the powerful innovations to that process down the road that I could think of is, a sub using a QR code like on a door of an apartment. And you scan the code and it essentially brings up Bluebeam Cloud and it drops down, here's all your punch list items for that particular space. That could be a really cool add-on to that process.
Yeah, as far as the hyperlinking capabilities, can have it really hyperlink to whatever you'd like. If you want to have, if I click here, go there. Well, wherever there is up to you. If it's a URL for a website, if it's another doc I have internally on my network, whatever. You can have that to go to whatever destination you need to. So it's a pretty slick way to go through and join information together and then kind of get you the right data with a click.
Yeah, and that's where it goes into Project Handover. One of the worst things to do, obviously, for a general contractor and subs is collect all the data and put it into this nice big package that the owner can use to then operate the building. Talking a little bit about how Bluebeam is used to do that.
So a few ways as far as trying to collect all the information. If you wanted to like combine sheets together, you can take, here's 18 different PDFs you wanted to have. I want to just give back one instead of 18 separate files. You can have all 18 being worked on and then just combine them into one little happy ribbon wrapped file to then hand over to the owner of that information. You can also create what's called an archival file. So you want to have, it's not so much a combined PDF, it's more of like a zip file effectively, where it's going to attach all the various content that make up a given plan set into a file that then you share. You share that archival document and they can open that up kind of like a zip file and see all the pieces that make it up. So it's a way to go through and have that handover be easy and just convenient to go through. So really either way, combine things together, archive it up in one little package to have to share that way. A lot of ways to do the handover. It can also be done through some collaboration tools within Studio. So as Bluebeam Studio projects can be a way to go through and have all the information for a job being done in one repository. Place everything you need. You want documents, you got PDFs, you got design files, Excel spreadsheets, doesn't matter. Put whatever you want into the project. And at the end of it, you can just take the entire project and then download the entire content to a folder you have maybe locally on your network, what have you. And then that could be zipped up or thrown onto a little thumb drive and shared that way, saying, here's all the information that you need. It's in this little package in this folder. So a few ways to go out there and share that content.
And switching gears a little bit off of those functions and functionality solutions, the change from Bluebeam, a static product on your computer, now going to Bluebeam Cloud. What's some of the enhancements that Bluebeam is doing with the cloud functionality and maybe some of the limitations there?
Sure. With Bluebeam Cloud, it's a way to go through and have another means of collaboration. So you've had Studio now for, I think it's going on 10, 12 years now for Bluebeam Studio. So you got projects and sessions used pretty extensively, probably more towards the session side being used in most cases. Now with Bluebeam Cloud, it lets you tie into that session from any device. So it's not just from like a localized install of Bluebeam Review, or if you had, say, the iPad app, you could tie into a session that way. Bluebeam Cloud is now a browser-based version for collaboration. So if you want to have access to that session, like I use an Android Samsung phone, I can have the Bluebeam Cloud app on this and have access to see the content in a session from my Android-based phone. Now, the functionality is more limited. I can't have all the bells and whistles from a normal, like, installed desktop version of the software. Like, getting into a session, desktop is the most robust capability-wise to interact with that. But if you don't have that, there isn't a trailer on site with internet connection and what have you. All you have is my feet and my phone. I still want to see my data. Cloud could be a way to solve that need to get into that information. So it's a way to have access to the session from anywhere. Now, projects are not in that yet. The access to Bluebeam Studio projects should be coming. Can't say for sure because I'll get shot by Bluebeam if I do too much, but it's probably end of October-ish, somewhere in there. I mean, about a month's time frame. The access to Bluebeam Studio projects should be within cloud. There was the secondary piece for projects earlier, which has been removed to tie in the studio piece instead.
Yeah, and that'll help the collaboration piece. A lot of the software is trying to dumb down it a little bit just so it can run smoothly on the cloud. Because Bluebeam is a very large program that it's running, just because of the power that's behind it. But I think that piece of it will come about and help on that collaboration of the product.
Yeah, for sure. So, and there's a lot of effort being put into Bluebeam Cloud from Bluebeam. So it's going to be one of those where if it's not there today, check back next week. It is one of those things where it's evolving that fast, where some of the tools and functions going, oh, it's so close. I wish it could, or whatever that feature might be. Odds are, if you wait a little bit, might be a week, might be a quarter, wait 2-3 months. It's going to be evolving and becoming more and more robust for functionality. So if something's hit, I'll just wait.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of another topic, which, a lot of people don't know that it's not just a 2D functionality product markup tool. It has a 3D functionality where you can actually see the model within, like a 3D viewer within Bluebeam. Talk about that and then maybe some of the enhancements that could happen if it goes to the cloud.
Yeah, so you can make a 3D PDF from multiple different software packages. You're coming from, like, Navisworks can make a 3D PDF. Revit can make a 3D PDF. Even like Google SketchUp, I think, is in the list for being able to make a 3D PDF out of there. So it's a way to go through and have kind of a more lightweight visual representation of a larger project in a form that's easily shared as the PDF file format. So you can take and open that up within Bluebeam Review. You can spin and rotate and do all that stuff for viewing capabilities of that content, that file, and even going so far as to take a certain component off. Like, here's my building. Great. I can't see in it because the roof's on it. Well, the roof might be one of the components that you can, in the markups list, there is a 3D component to that, and show all the parts that make up, all the families that are being used inside of that. To then say, well, I don't want to see this. You can choose to hide, like, the roof of the building to see what's inside of there, or take the entire east wall off the house and see what's inside of that. So you can go through and show the content, pivot around, rotate that, and view it in a fashion that makes sense, because oftentimes just a plan view may not be easily interpreted to what it really is supposed to look like. Having that 3D model of it that you can spin and rotate and kind of have it in your hands that way just helps it relay the message better. It's more easily understood having a model in front of you versus a bunch of sections and views and elevations to have to look at. It just doesn't give you that same kind of feel for what it's going to end up looking like. So within the PDF scope, you can section it, like add like a cross plane, cut through like the entire building in half to only show certain content. And you can pick and choose how it's being displayed.
Yeah, and I think that functionality, once that also goes up into the cloud, that'll help a lot. obviously there's going to be a lot of functionality to use that, let's say in the job site trailer to show certain people certain things, but having that ability to be out on site on your iPad or similar device, that's going to go a long way in trying to bring that out into the field. Because I think that is a big struggle of the model. We have all this complex technology that's allowed us to, do coordination of different ways, but not, it still has a really big struggle trying to get out.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not there quite yet to have something as robust as a 3D model and it's like Bluebeam Cloud. It's still just a 2D sheet to have to be displayed up there, but it's coming. It's almost inevitable at some point. You're gonna have just like Bluebeam Cloud will be your basic tool you use for probably 90% of what your daily interactions will. Because you have quick, easy access to it, just browser based. It's device agnostic. Use it with whatever you want to have, be it your phone, a cheaper Android tablet to use. That's always been a question we get a lot is it Android supported? Just Bluebeam in general? No, it isn't. But now it's a browser-based platform to go through. Now it doesn't matter. If it's Android on your iPhone, on your Mac, it wouldn't matter what you're trying to use. It's just a browser. So access information that way. So it's going to be a huge benefit here moving forward and seeing what Bluebeam does with that. It'll be fun to watch.
Talking about that, what are some of the integrations that you see within Bluebeam and other softwares? Obviously, we talked about Autodesk and some of their products, but what other integrations do you see or maybe are forthcoming?
There's a lot of integrations that can be tied into the studio portion of Bluebeam Review. Probably is the primary use case because right now there isn't an open API for anyone to take their third-party software and somehow manipulate the PDF or trying to modify Bluebeam Review to get some kind of output. The API is not there currently, but there is some API for Studio. So a lot of what these other parties are getting into, they get into like the Procore and Newforma, whatnot being used for some of that process. You can take that as being kind of your primary file management environment to go through, feed that into a studio session, get the collaboration from the team inside of that documentation, get all the markups and all the kind of content you need, and then pull that back into those data management systems. So there are plugins and integration to a lot of third-party content that's evolving, it seems like almost daily for what can be tied into the studio session scope. But the bigger ones to look at are data management systems like Ignite can be tied into it directly. The Procores, the Newforma has plugins they developed to tie into the sessions as well. Autodesk used to have one, but they pulled that because they feel it's too much competitive in nature between the two programs, so they don't want to have the handshake between the two. But hopefully that'll be changing here relatively soon. But there's a lot of content, like even for government agencies, a lot of permitting. They've got other, their programs they use that permitting process to go through. They'll tie it into a session to get the teams to review it and then submit that back to the applicant for their sign off the review and to make their changes to it. So there's a lot of content. I couldn't even hazard a guess as to how many integrations are even available right now. That seems to be, like I said, almost daily, something new is capable to be tied into a studio session.
Yeah, because I think that's the piece that everybody's trying to do the document management side of things, but they're not focusing on the powerful tools of markup, which I think that's a big portion of what Bluebeam was always meant to do and what its power is. So taking the functionality of these different products that you talked about there, is going to make the industry workflows a lot better in that regard. Next piece of this is talking about training. I always talk about at our company, you know, Bluebeam has been around now for quite some time. But for some reason, it's not being taught in schools. And I think it's a huge disservice to students coming out in the field of architecture, engineering, and construction to not have some sort of knowledge of how to use Bluebeam, coming from school. What does that learning and training onboarding as a new employee look like from US CAD standpoint to get somebody up to speed? And do you see in the future maybe Bluebeam allowing that to be sold to students?
Yeah, so the onboarding process, I think kind of to go back to the beginning of maybe even why it's not taught in some schools currently is that it used to be all Adobe. And to be fair with the Adobe Acrobat, you don't need a lot of training because there are like a dozen tools to add in. You want text, clouds, arrows. You can do that, and they're in a fixed position. You don't really customize any of that. It is what it is. So the learning curve to get up to speed on that is not lengthy. You probably take anyone off the street, let them play with Adobe Acrobat for 20 minutes, and they'd be just fine. It doesn't take a lot to learn it. So that might be part of the reasons why it's not really taught in schools, because there's not much to learn with those types of tools. It's fairly simplistic. It's not very robust. It is what it is. But now with, the kind of resurgence of Bluebeam Review, because Bluebeam has been around for 25 years. It's been a product to have, but it's only really kind of got a lot of traction in the last 8 or 10, somewhere in there. So there's more need around some education with how to use the software effectively. And even with that, you probably could have someone sit down with Bluebeam Review, zero experience and knowledge on it, and they could probably fumble through to be at least capable to get a task done. Are they screaming through it efficiently? Yeah, probably not. But can they get a task done? Sure. So that's something I like to go if you're going to do is take anyone, even with years experience or not, and get them all into a fundamental class. Get going through all the basics. Here's the interface. Here's how you move through the software. Here's how you move through a PDF. I've had people in a training class that are in their own words, like 5-year veterans of using Bluebeam Review. And I'll even hear from them going, oh, I had no idea you could do that. Like they're going to get information from even a fundamentals class that you just didn't know the software could do. So something I would highly promote that anyone coming on board to use Bluebeam Review is to go through, whether it's through US CAD or not, just get some training on the fundamentals of Bluebeam Review. There are some tools you can use right within the software, right from the help menu within like Bluebeam Review 21. There are tutorials or some how-to guides. Even the help system from Bluebeam is actually pretty good. I've been around the industry now for 25 years myself, and some of the help systems, like the old AutoCAD help from like release 14, you need to have like a PhD in English to even understand half the wording being used in some of that. Just a lot of information, but it was hard to read. With Bluebeam, it's pretty well laid out. It's pretty good, just to help. There's also access to what's termed as Bluebeam University, more of that self-paced, just online video to watch of various topics inside of the software. And you just get access to that with Bluebeam Review 21. There's no additional fee. You're charged with it. You just get it. It's part of the library of information that you have access to. Take advantage of it. Whether you want to watch that stuff on your own at home or you're hanging out, with the kids, watching a few videos. Yeah, it seems kind of nerdy, but that's stuff I would do because I'm a nerd. But it can be as far as doing some videos or actually get into a proper class. So with US CAD, we have a couple of different tiers of training that we can provide. We hold a monthly, what's termed as a getting started. Just a quick 1 hour for like brand new users, have not used the software before, just to understand what you're looking at. What is the environment? The menus and toolbars and panels, it can feel a little overwhelming at first, just to get a comfort with the interface and then adding in some comments, like text, clouds, arrows, just to put some red lines on the file. Then it can, if that's not quite enough, I don't care about just the raw fundamentals to it. An actual fundamentals class, which takes all that and just spends a bit more time going through all the interface, all the options for all the markups, a little slower process to go through in just a couple hours. So we can take someone with zero experience to it into a working, usable, employee that can be functional in less than half a day. And that can then evolve from there into other topics that you wanted to get into. If you need more of, these team members have to be efficient at doing the measuring, the estimating, the counting process to go through, we can do an entire class on just that portion too, focused on all the measuring functions. And it just goes up from there as far as what you want to have for capabilities. Tips and tricks to being used inside of this, ways to use certain keystrokes and functions to be even more efficient with using the software. Collaboration, classes focused on just the studio portion to it, the cloud. There's a lot that we can offer to bring someone from zero experience into like full blown, like they have the Bluebeam champion inside of the office, and people come to them when they have questions.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the company I work for. That's one of the big things that we're trying to do with Bluebeam is trying to take a new employee or let's say an intern co-op, starting with that onboarding with the basic essential class. That's getting them started, then getting them into Bluebeam University, and then from there, going into more intermediate and advanced classes to even getting to point of keyboard shortcuts that allows you to become even more efficient with it. But that's the big piece. It's just it's like any software, just trying to go through those different steps and trying to make that. But I hear a lot of universities, just talking to them and reaching out that they would love the ability to teach that uh, Bluebeam in general to students, but it doesn't give them that functionality at this point versus like Autodesk and other products.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the plan is with the Bluebeam side of things, if they're gonna have like a student license, if you will. I know they had it, I believe, previously. I'm not sure if it's still something that they
Bluebeam Dynamics. I believe it's so if I'll double check, but if I'm not mistaken, yeah, with schools, I don't know if it's up to 50 licenses or something like that, but with some schools, they do get free licenses if it is for, an institute. It is a school. So that there is something along those lines. I'm not too familiar with it because that is directly through Bluebeam, but I can double check on that because I know that they do something. I'm just not entirely positive, in terms of details.
And then, just the future of Bluebeam in general of what both of you think. AI is going to play a big part in our industry. We're starting to see that with everything that's popping up. Seems like every other night I get something that's popped up about AI. But just talk a little bit about where you see the future of Bluebeam going and maybe how AI will play a role in Bluebeam.
Yeah, so there actually is some pieces of AI already in Bluebeam Review today. So that they just came out with the newer version of the document compare and the overlay. We talked about that a little while ago. The new version of that, they ran through a patch of Bluebeam Review 21. I think this is back in March, I believe, of this year with that update. They introduced a new kind of methodology within the overlay and the compare for it to be automatically aligned. So if the content were to ever shift, my first version, the position's here, the second version is moved over a little bit on the page. You would never know that until after you ran the comparison and you got a cloud over the entire works, or you ran the overlay that's offset by a little bit and it just looks awful. So you'd go back and do the manual line. You'd pick 3 points in the first page, pick 3 more points in the second page, and have the content line up. Again, not tough to do, but it was just time involved. Now within Review 21, I think it was 21.2 was the patch, you can now just choose an auto align option. So it's going to go through and analyze and figure out what is the title block, what's the border, and assume that's not what you want to align to, and then look at the content in the main body of the PDF and find some common points between both sheets to align that content to each other for you automatically. So it saves the time of having to manually, pick points and choose that process yourself. So it's taking that information and trying to ingest it and consume it and review it to find the content that's consistent in both sheets. But I'm not sure what the plan is with Bluebeam to what else they can do with that AI kind of information scope. My assumptions be more into like that whole title block, the page labeling, the part numbering of the page numbering piece, to have it analyze the content on open and then generate those page labels, maybe even bookmarks and content too, if it's not there already, just to determine what that information should be and create that content for you on the fly.
Yeah, and it's using that OCR engine that was built within that to try to make sure that the sheet that it's analyzing is getting the information that it needs to do that. And the other piece that I see that it could really be impactful is to auto do some of the takeoff within Bluebeam. So some of the counting and the measurements could come into play in terms of AI.
Yeah, potentially. The one challenge I see with that right now is that in the PDF, it doesn't know a window from a door from a wall. It's just line work. So there has to be some way to when the PDF is created to insert some of that metadata into the object geometry to know that this information represents a window. But over here, that information represents a door, or this is a diffuser for ducting, whatnot, to know what the line work means, and then somehow pull that out of the PDF. So I got 37 diffusers. I got 18 of that size door and 9 of that size door. To know that content up front, it has to have some of the data built into it when the PDF is made. So that's where I see a lot of the investment of time happening potentially with the Bluebeam efforts is making the PDF itself just more intelligent. So you can just get more data from it.
Yeah. The other piece that I could see as well, just thinking through it, what about the search functionality and it giving you some information from the search, not just, where it is in the document, but also maybe even the pictures, like searching different pictures and trying to find where those things are. I could see where AI can come into play.
Yeah, just ways to analyze and interpret and give you some kind of summary of the information based off of whatever summary type you're trying to find. You can find me all the fire hydrants. If plan view, picture views, whatever it might be, to understand what a fire hydrant is and tell you, yeah, you got 18 fire hydrants. That can be pretty slick.
And then any other future capabilities that you could see that are going to be really impactful, let's say in the next couple of years within Bluebeam.
There's gotta be a lot happening when it comes to the Bluebeam cloud piece being a bit more capable. Right now, though, the browser with the desktop version has the most features and capability. Then, like the iPad, the environment is kind of next for functionality, and Android is kind of lagging behind just because it's kind of a three-step process. Browser first, the desktop first, the iOS second, Android third. So it kind of goes through that cycle of when things get updated. So a lot of effort's going to go from Bluebeam into Bluebeam Cloud to make the capabilities just more and more robust. At a certain point, I have no idea when. It's just me speaking, not speaking for Bluebeam, but I'm pretty sure the iPad app is just going to go away because all the functionality, all the capability that are in the app are within cloud, and you can do all that from anything. If it's your phone, a Samsung phone, iPhone, Mac, don't care. Do all that from whatever device you have. That's going to be coming. It might be 6 months from now. It might be 6 years from now. I have no idea when it might happen, but at some point, that's going to happen. We're going a more capable, more nimble environment of cloud just makes it easier to do, easier to access.
And then any one tool that really excites you that could really change in the future that could really change our workflows in the industry.
Kind of tying into the cloud conversation too is your tool chest that you have locally to be able to have that move with me. So if I log into Bryan's machine, I get my tool set. Or if I log into Cody's machine, I still get my tool sets that I've developed. So having that be tied to me as a user of the software, not just tied to my machine, is going to be huge, I think. That would be a lot of fun to have the tool set roll with the user, not with the device.
And then the final question I have for both of you, what does the future of US CAD look like in terms of, the products that you guys are training on, services you provide? Just a little bit about that to finish up here.
Oh, for what we're getting into, I mean, some I can't even talk about, but growing, of course, growing just more organically, growing through just acquisitions inside of there, and we're developing our own IP of content to have. And it's becoming more and more robust. The team we have hired on are extremely capable of some of the best in the industry that I've ever seen. we're going to be one of the main players probably on the planet when it comes to AEC in general, primarily in the Autodesk house. I think within AutoCAD and Civil 3D and Revit and Abbott and all that, we got some of the best in the business that know those products well. And it's just getting, bigger, better, faster every day.
Bryan, from your perspective?
It's just like Ken had said, we're just booming just through organic acquisition. I know that we've took on just a handful of business, and we're just from our BIM services that we have available. You need help with your coordinators, you need help modelers. I mean, just 2 weeks, we need 3 people done. We can kind of help you there too. Like Ken had mentioned with Autodesk. Now we're working with Ignite. We're also partnered with Adobe, almost like a one-stop shop. So any kind of software, any kind of needs, just a conversation, right? It is not something that we can help you with. I'd be happy to point you in the other direction. So I mean, that's kind of where we come from. We want to make sure that you're getting all the best help. If it's something that we don't do, we have no issue, having you go to the next person, if you will. But we're just growing. I don't see us slowing down anytime soon. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe we're the largest reseller of Bluebeam, and we actually, not to toot our own horn, but we won the 2023 Bluebeam Partner of the Year. So current Partners of the Year for Bluebeam. I don't see that slowing down. And yeah, I mean, it's only one way up. So looking good.
Well, thank you both for joining me on the BIM Heroes podcast and talking about the state of Bluebeam. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Cody. Appreciate it, Ken. Thank you, man.